Zayne Bennett had exactly $23 in his wallet when he found the purse on the sidewalk outside the grocery store, and not a single second to waste. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Daisy said, tugging on his jacket sleeve with her tiny hand. Her brown curls bounced as she rubbed her eyes. "I know, baby. I'll get you something real soon," Zayne promised, crouching beside her. At 5 years old, Daisy was his entire world. He tightened the scarf around her neck before picking up the sleek black handbag lying just inches from the curb. It was definitely expensive. Smooth leather, gold accents, and a logo Zayne had only ever seen on billboards in Midtown. He looked around, no one. He opened the bag just enough to peek inside wallet, keys, and a business card that read, "Kiera Fairbanks, Executive Director, Fairbanks Global Holdings." Well, damn. Zayne sighed and lifted Daisy in one arm, the purse in the other, and headed to the address on the card. He could have left it at the store's Lost and Found, but something told him this wasn't the kind of bag you left behind lightly. It was a 20-minute walk, and Daisy fell asleep on his shoulder halfway there. When he reached the building, the doorman looked him up and down like he didn't belong, which, to be fair, he didn't. Zayne's coat had a tear in the sleeve and his boots were worn, but he stood tall. "I'm here to return this," he said, holding up the purse. "It belongs to Kiera Fairbanks." The doorman narrowed his eyes. "Wait here." Zayne shifted Daisy in his arms as the man disappeared into the lobby. He thought about turning around. He didn't need thanks. He didn't want anything. But then the doors opened again. And she stepped out. Kiera Fairbanks. She was tall, striking, dressed in a long cream coat with gold buttons. Her red lipstick made her look like she walked out of a movie. But it was her eyes surprised, curious, warm, that made Zayne catch his breath. "You found it?" she asked, her voice soft but sure. Zayne nodded and handed it over. "It was near the grocery store on 9th. Figured you might want it back." She opened it, checking quickly. "Everything's here." She looked up. "You don't know how much trouble you just saved me." Zayne smiled faintly, glad it could help. Her eyes flicked to Daisy in his arms. "Is she sleeping?" "Yes, long day." "You walked all the way here." "Didn't have a ride," he said, not offering more. Kiera hesitated, then said, "Come inside. Just for a minute, it's freezing." Zayne shook his head. "That's not necessary." But Daisy stirred, whimpering. Kiera didn't push. She simply nodded and said, "Then at least let me give you something, for your time, for the walk." "I didn't do it for money." "I know, that's why I want to." He looked down at Daisy, then back at Kiera. "All right, a coffee, and something for her to eat." She smiled. "Deal." Inside was another world. Marble floors, chandeliers, velvet chairs. Zayne felt like he was tracking mud across a museum. They sat in a private lounge, and Kiera ordered hot chocolate and croissants for Daisy, coffee for Zayne. Daisy woke up just as the food arrived and blinked at the spread like it was Christmas morning. "Hi," Kiera said gently to her. "I'm Kiera." "I'm Daisy," she whispered, then grabbed a croissant like it might disappear. Zayne chuckled. She's not shy when she's hungry. Kiera watched them both. She's beautiful. She takes after her mom. Kiera's expression softened. You're not together. Zayne shook his head. She passed away 3 years ago. I'm sorry. Thanks, he sipped his coffee. It's been a lot. Kiera leaned forward. What do you do? Construction, when I can get it. Lately, nothing sticks. I take what I can. I'm trying to save up for childcare so I can work more. Do you have family nearby? No, just us. Kiera was quiet for a second, then said, You did something kind today, and not many people would have. Zayne looked at her. You don't have to say all that. I want to, her voice was steady. You didn't even know who I was, you just did the right thing. He shrugged. That's how I was raised. Kiera tilted her head, studying him with something unreadable in her eyes. You know, I was supposed to have a driver pick me up, but I left in a rush. I'm glad I did. Otherwise, I wouldn't have met you. Zayne's brows lifted. Not every day a broke dad gets thanked by a woman with a penthouse. She laughed. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. He smiled. You're not, it's just been a while since someone was this nice to us. Kiera's expression shifted. Come by again sometime, she said. I mean it. I'd like to see you two again. Zayne hesitated, then nodded. Maybe. She handed him a card. If you change your mind. He took it. That night, after putting Daisy to bed in their small apartment over a laundromat, Zayne pulled out the card and stared at it. Something about her voice, the way she looked at him like she saw past the worn coat, and tired eyes stuck with him. He put the card in his wallet. And 2 days later, he called. Zayne was still adjusting the collar of his only clean shirt when the elevator doors opened to reveal the same marble-floored lobby he'd stepped into 3 days ago. Daisy clutched his hand tightly, her pink backpack bouncing against her back as she skipped beside him. This place smells like flowers, she whispered, wrinkling her nose. Probably because it's clean, Zayne muttered under his breath before nodding at the receptionist, who motioned them toward a lounge just beyond the main atrium. Kiera was already there. She stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, backlit by the skyline. Her hair was pulled into a sleek bun this time, and she wore a navy blazer over a white blouse that looked like it cost more than Zayne's rent. But she wasn't looking out the window. She was watching Daisy with a smile that didn't feel forced. You came, she said, walking over. Zayne gave a small nod, didn't want to be rude. You're not, I'm glad you did. She crouched down in front of Daisy. Hey, sweetheart, I thought I'd show you something cool today. Daisy's eyes lit up. What is it? Kiera stood and gestured toward a hallway. There's a whole playroom upstairs. Books, toys, everything you can imagine. My assistant's niece is there too, so you won't be alone. Zayne looked down at Daisy. You good with that, bug? Daisy nodded eagerly. Can I go now? Kiera waved over a woman in a gray dress suit, who introduced herself Marla, the assistant, and then led Daisy away, hand in hand. Zayne shoved his hands in his pockets. Thanks for that. I wasn't sure how long we'd stay. I didn't want you to feel like you had to leave quickly, Kiera said, leading him further into a more private room with velvet chairs and a glass coffee table set with a carafe of water and crystal tumblers. Actually wanted to ask you something. Zayne raised an eyebrow. All right. Kiera poured them both water, then sat across from him. I need help with something, a project. It's outside the usual channels I use, and I thought of you. Zayne frowned, confused. You don't know me. Not well, no, but trust my instincts. She leaned forward slightly. We just acquired a row of old properties in Queens. One of them used to be this beautiful community center, but it's been gutted. We want to restore it, but I don't want just any contractor. I want someone who cares, someone who understands what that space used to mean. Zayne blinked. You want me to work on it? I want you to lead it. I'm not licensed. I don't have a company. You have experience. I checked. You used to run a small crew in Brooklyn, right? Before things fell apart. His jaw tightened. That was a long time ago. But you still know what you're doing. He looked away, jaw working. Why me? Because you walked 20 blocks to return something you didn't have to. Because you didn't ask for anything. Because you look at your daughter like she's the only thing that's ever mattered to you. Her voice was calm but steady. And because, think people like you deserve a shot. Zayne exhaled slowly. What's the catch? No catch, you'd be paid fairly. I'd connect you with the right permits, people, backing. You'd hire your own team, run your own schedule. You'd answer to me, but I'm not interested in micromanaging. He studied her, trying to find the angle. And if I say no? Then we part ways, and I'll still make sure Daisy has a bookshelf filled with whatever she likes. He snorted, You don't give up, do you? Not when I believe in something. Zayne leaned back in the chair, arms crossed. I'd need time. You've got it. I'll send over the building plans. You look them over. Think about what you'd need to start. They sat in silence for a moment, and then Kiera said, What happened to your company? Zayne hesitated. My best friend ran off with the money, took 2 of our biggest clients with him. I got stuck with the debts, the lawsuits, the whole mess. I lost the truck, the tools, everything. Then my wife got sick. Kiera didn't interrupt. He cleared his throat. By the time I got out from under it, I didn't have anything left to go back to. No one wanted to hire a guy with a record of unpaid claims, even if they weren't his fault. You didn't declare bankruptcy. I couldn't. I was trying to protect my daughter's future. I've been scraping by ever since. Kiera nodded once. Let me help you build it back. Zayne looked at her carefully. Why are you really doing this? She didn't flinch. Because I see someone who deserves more than what life handed him, and because I'm tired of working with people who only care about profit. Zayne stood, his movement slow. I'll think about it. I hope you do. When he returned to the hallway, Daisy was sitting on the floor, surrounded by picture books and a box of wooden blocks. She looked up and waved. Did you see the fish tank? She asked, pointing to the wall behind her. Not yet, he said, crouching beside her, but you having fun? She nodded. It's like a castle here. He looked at the aquarium, the bookshelves, the soft light pouring through the high windows. Then his eyes drifted back to Kiera, standing in the doorway, watching them. Maybe it was a castle. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the outsider he thought he was. Zayne adjusted the hard hat on his head, squinting up at the gutted building in front of him. It had been 16 years since he'd walked onto a job site as a lead, and yet the scent of sawdust and cold concrete still felt like muscle memory. The place was a mess, wires dangling, pipes exposed, beams stripped to steel, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was standing on solid ground. You're late, came a voice behind him. He turned to see Kiera approaching in black boots and a tailored coat, clipboard tucked under her arm. Her hair was down this time, curling at her shoulders. She didn't look like someone who belonged on a construction site, but she carried herself like she owned the entire city block. I'm not late, Zayne said. You're just early. Kiera stopped beside him, surveying the building with a sharp gaze. You really think it's salvageable? With the right crew and the right budget, yeah, but it's going to take more than just fresh paint and optimism. I didn't bring you in for optimism, she said. I brought you in because I want someone who knows how to rebuild something from the ground up, even if nobody else sees the value in it. Zayne's jaw ticked. He looked at her sideways. You always talk like that. Like what? Like a person who's used to being the smartest one in the room. Kiera smiled faintly, only when I am. That made him laugh, a low, genuine sound that caught both of them off guard. She looked at him, eyes narrowing like she hadn't expected to like the sound of it so much. Come on, he said after a beat. Let me show you where your money's going. They walked through the exposed frame of what used to be a community theater, her heels echoing against the concrete. Zayne pointed out structural flaws, places where mold had eaten through drywall, and where the old subflooring would need to be ripped up entirely. She listened, nodding, asking precise questions. She never interrupted. She didn't flinch at the cost. Why this building? He asked finally. You've got a dozen prettier ones in your portfolio. Kiera glanced up at the cracked skylight. My mother grew up 3 blocks from here. She used to talk about this place like it was sacred. Dance recitals, book drives, her first kiss. Zayne blinked. You're rebuilding it for her. She passed away last year. Kiera's tone didn't waver, but her eyes dimmed just a little. I inherited the company and found her old journals stuffed in a box in the attic. She wrote about this place more than she wrote about anything else. He didn't say anything for a moment. The silence sat between them like something understood but not spoken aloud. When they stepped outside again, the winter air hit sharper. Kiera rubbed her arms. You should wear something warmer next time, Zayne said, glancing at her coat. And you should stop pretending you're not excited about this, she replied, lifting a brow. I saw your face when you talked about the foundation work. He shook his head. I don't get excited, get practical. Sure, she said, amused. That's why you've already started sketching redesigns in your notebook. Zayne looked away, but he didn't deny it. A car pulled up to the curb, a sleek black SUV. The driver stepped out and walked around to open the door for her. I have a board meeting, Kiera said, turning back to him. But I want you to meet with the architect tomorrow. He's young but sharp. His name's Felix. I told him you'd be in charge. Zayne nodded. I'll be here. The driver started to help her into the car, but she paused and looked back. What's Daisy doing tomorrow? She's got school in the morning, half day though. Have her come here after, Kiera said. We're setting up a small reading corner while the top floor gets cleared. I thought she might like to pick out some of the books. Zayne stared at her. You don't have to do that. I know, that's why I'm doing it. She stepped into the car before he could respond. The door shut with a quiet click and the SUV pulled away. The next afternoon, Daisy stood in the middle of the upper floor, turning slowly in a circle as she stared at the rows of bookshelves being installed. The construction crew worked quietly around her, careful not to disturb the small oasis of rugs and beanbags being arranged near the windows. Kiera was crouched beside her, holding a stack of picture books. This one's about a girl who builds a robot out of junk, she said, handing it to Daisy. And this one's about a boy who turns a cardboard box into a spaceship. Daisy lit up. Can I read both? Of course. Zayne watched from the doorway, arms crossed over his chest. The sun hit Kiera's hair through the dusty glass, and Daisy laughed at something she said. He'd seen a lot of women brush off kids with polite smiles and distant patience, but Kiera wasn't faking anything. She was completely present. You didn't have to come up here, he said when she walked over a few minutes later. I wanted to see which book she chose, she said. Also, Felix is late. He sent a text, traffic on the bridge. Kiera sighed. He's brilliant, but he has no sense of time. Zayne tilted his head. You do this with all your contractors, build libraries for their kids. No, she said, but I've never met one like you. He met her gaze, and something shifted in the air, something quiet but undeniable. You're not what I expected, he said. I get that a lot. They didn't look away from each other. The sounds of drills and hammers faded beneath the moment. Then Daisy called out, Daddy, look, she found me a book about dragons. Zayne exhaled, breaking the tension. She's gonna ask to come here every day now. Kiera smiled. I hope she does. He didn't say it, but he hoped so too. The gala shimmered with chandeliers and champagne, held inside a historic museum Kiera had personally funded the restoration for. It was her company's largest charity event of the year, hosted to raise funds for rebuilding community centers across the city, including the one Zayne now oversaw. Zayne stood near the edge of the crowd, adjusting the borrowed tux that fit a little too perfectly to have come off any rack. He hadn't wanted to come. He didn't belong in a room full of billionaires and board members in cufflinks worth more than his old truck. But Kiera had insisted, and Daisy was safely home with Marla, who had volunteered to watch her for the night. He'd expected to feel invisible. Instead, he felt watched. Not by the crowd, though, by her. Kiera walked toward him through the sea of tailored suits and silk gowns, every movement poised but unhurried. Her dress was black, cut sharp at the shoulders and soft at the waist, with a neckline that flirted with daring but never crossed the line. She wore no necklace, only a pair of diamond earrings that caught the light when she stopped in front of him. "You clean up well," she said, her voice low. "I had help," Zayne replied, tugging at the lapel. "I think your assistant threatened a tailor." "Good," she said. "He overcharges everyone else." Zayne glanced around. "This is a whole different world." She tilted her head. "So is a construction site at 6 in the morning, but you didn't blink when I handed you blueprints." "I didn't have time to blink." "Well, now you do." She stepped closer. "You're not a visitor here, Zayne. You're part of this." "Because I'm wearing a monkey suit." "No," she said, her gaze unwavering. "Because you've rebuilt more than a building. You've rebuilt yourself." He looked at her carefully. "You always see people like this." "I try to," her voice softened, "but with you, it's not hard." Before he could respond, someone clinked a spoon against a glass. A hush fell over the room as the attention shifted to the stage, where the MC began announcing the evening's keynote address. "They're expecting you," Kiera said. Zayne blinked, expecting me to do what? "Speak," she said, briefly, about the project, about why it matters. "I didn't agree to that." "You didn't say no, either." She handed him a folded card. "Your name's already on the program." Zayne looked at the card, then up at the sea of strangers. "I work with wood and steel, Kiera, not microphones." "Then speak like you're talking to Daisy," she said, "and I promise they'll listen." Minutes later, Zayne stood under the stage lights, heart pounding. The microphone felt heavier than it should. He cleared his throat, glanced at the rows of glittering eyes and polished shoes, then found Kiera in the crowd standing near the front, arms crossed, gaze steady. "My name's Zayne Bennett," he began, voice rough but sure. "I'm a contractor, a father, and up until a couple months ago, I was barely keeping my head above water." No one moved, the silence held. "I wasn't supposed to be here tonight, not in this room, not on this stage, but someone gave me a shot when no one else would. She didn't ask for credentials. She didn't care about my past. She saw what I could do, and more than that, she saw who I was doing it for." He paused, swallowing. "My daughter thinks this new building we're working on is magic. She says it's going to be made of dreams and books and spaces where kids can fly. And I think she's right. Not because of the materials or the blueprints, but because people like you are willing to believe in something bigger than numbers. You're building hope. And that's the only foundation that really lasts." Applause erupted, louder than he expected. He stepped off the stage, the card forgotten in his pocket. Kiera met him near the edge of the crowd. "Told you they'd listen." "I didn't know I needed to say it," Zayne said quietly, "but I think I did." "I knew you did." They stood there for a moment, the sounds of the gala fading behind them. "I've been thinking," Kiera said, her expression unreadable. "I don't want to do this alone, not just the foundation, everything." Zayne's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I've spent years building walls, companies, projects. I didn't even realize how much I'd boxed myself in until you and Daisy walked into my life." Her voice trembled slightly. "I want more than boardrooms and balance sheets. I want family. I want chaos in the mornings and someone to eat takeout with at midnight. I want you." Zayne stared at her, his throat suddenly dry. "Kiera." "I know it's fast," she said quickly, "but I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking for a chance." He reached for her hand, curling his fingers around hers. "I'm not good at fancy speeches, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She stepped closer, and the last bit of distance between them disappeared. "I'm not afraid of where you came from," she whispered. "I'm in love with where you're going." Zayne looked into her eyes, and for the first time in years, he saw a future that didn't feel like borrowed time. They kissed, slow, certain, and without hesitation. Applause broke out again somewhere behind them, but this time it didn't matter if it was for them or not. The world had already shifted. 3 months later, the community center opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony led by Daisy, who wore a bright yellow dress and held the scissors like a queen. Behind her, Zayne and Kiera stood hand in hand, their lives no longer running parallel but woven together for good. The building brimmed with laughter and light, just like Daisy had imagined. And in the middle of it all stood the man who'd once had $23 in his wallet, and the woman who'd seen that as more than enough. The first snow of the season fell in soft, silent flurries, blanketing the city in white as if the world had paused to exhale. Inside the newly rebuilt community center, warmth and laughter filled every corner. Children ran between shelves, parents chatted over coffee, and volunteers guided tours through the art room and recording studio. The grand reopening had turned into something more, a celebration of second chances. Zayne stood in the multipurpose hall, watching a group of teens test out the new music equipment. Felix waved from across the room, his ever-messy hair sticking out from under a beanie. Zayne nodded back, then turned as he felt a familiar presence behind him. "You're not hiding, are you?" Kiera asked, her voice teasing as she stepped up beside him. "Not hiding," he said. "Just watching it all happen still doesn't feel real." She leaned slightly into him, her shoulder brushing his. "It's real." He glanced down at her. "You're wearing boots." "It's snowing." "They're still designer." Kiera lifted her chin. "They're functional." He chuckled, and she smiled, the kind that reached her eyes, something that had started happening more often since the center opened. Zayne had noticed how she walked differently now, less like she was bracing to be challenged and more like she was choosing to be present. And when she looked at him, it wasn't with curiosity anymore. It was with certainty. "I've been thinking," she said, pulling something small from her coat pocket. He raised his brow. "That usually means I'm about to be roped into something with a schedule." She handed him a folded sheet of paper. No schedule this time, just an idea. Zayne opened it slowly, frowning as he read. His eyes scanned the page twice before he looked up. "You want to convert the upper floor into transitional housing." Kiera nodded. "For single parents, temporary units, support programs, on-site childcare. I've already started talks with the zoning board." Zayne stared at her stunned. "You don't stop, do you?" "I can't," she said simply. "Not when I know what's possible now." He folded the paper again, tucking it into his back pocket. "You want me to build it?" "I want you to design it, from scratch, your way." There was a pause, quiet but full of promise. "I've never done something like that," he said. "Neither had I," she replied, "until I met you." Before he could respond, Daisy came bounding in, her cheeks pink from playing outside. She wore a scarf too big for her and boots she'd insisted on decorating with glitter glue the night before. "Daddy, Kiera, there's a puppet show starting in 5 minutes. We have to sit in the front." Zayne crouched. "You ready to be the loudest laugher again?" "I'm ready to be the loudest everything," she declared proudly. Kiera extended her hand, and Daisy took it without hesitation. They walked into the theater together, the three of them settling into the front row. Daisy sat between them, her little hands clutching a hot chocolate cup as the lights dimmed and the show began. The puppets danced, music played, and laughter echoed through the room. Zayne glanced sideways at Kiera, who had her arm resting on the back of Daisy's chair. Her expression was relaxed, open, and quietly content. Halfway through the show, Daisy leaned against Kiera's side, eyes drooping. By the time the curtain fell, she was asleep. Zayne gently lifted her into his arms, careful not to spill the hot chocolate still clutched loosely in her hand. "I should get her home," he whispered. Kiera nodded but didn't move aside. "Wait." He paused. "I've been thinking about something else," she said. He smiled faintly. "This one better not involve paperwork." "No," she said, "it involves us." He didn't speak, he waited. "I know we've been dancing around it," she said softly, "but I want you to know I'm ready, for whatever this is, for all of it." Zayne's brow furrowed slightly. "You sure?" She reached up and touched the side of his face, fingers cool from holding her drink. "I'm sure, and not just about you, about Daisy, about a life, a real one." He looked at her for a long moment, then let out a breath that seemed to carry years of weight. "Then marry me." Kiera blinked. "What?" "Marry me," he said again, steady this time. "I don't have a ring in my pocket. I didn't plan it, but I've never been more certain about anything." She stared at him as if trying to memorize the moment. Then slowly, she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Absolutely yes." They didn't kiss right away. They just stood there, Daisy asleep in his arms, the world unfolding around them as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. Later that winter, in a garden courtyard behind the community center, surrounded by fairy lights and fresh snow, Zayne and Kiera said their vows. Marla officiated. Felix cried. Daisy danced barefoot in the snow and gave a toast about how Kiera made the best pancakes and let her watch movies past bedtime. They didn't need grand declarations. The whole city had already seen what they'd built together. In the spring, the upper floor opened as a transitional housing program. Each new resident was welcomed personally by Kiera and Zayne, Daisy handing out hand-drawn welcome cards. In the summer, they moved into a brownstone not far from the center. It had creaky stairs and a backyard just big enough for a garden and a tire swing. Kiera insisted on painting the kitchen yellow. Zayne let Daisy pick the tile for the bathroom, which resulted in sparkles embedded in everything. In the fall, they hosted their first family holiday, with mismatched chairs and too much pie, and the kind of laughter that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're meant to be. And every night, after Daisy had fallen asleep, Zayne and Kiera sat together on the back steps of their home, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars peek out behind the city lights. They didn't talk about what came next. They didn't have to. They had built it. Together, forever.